Welcome back, tech heads and gadget gurus, to another episode of Tech Times Daily, where once again we're going to dive into the world of tech and discuss a very interesting topic that popped up on Tech Times radar earlier today. Um, as always, I'm your host, and with me is Christian. Christian, how's it going?
Good, good. How's everyone? How are you, Chris?
Good, man. Trying to stay cool, as cool as possible. But yeah, we've had a couple conversations like this. And I feel that a lot of the conversations that we've had are kind of along the lines of like, is this a good step? Like when we're talking about TikTok or when talking about regulations, like these are things that are likely to happen or in the process of happening. So this is another one. But I think this one is a little more straightforward, a little more clear as the intent and kind of the position that the US is in, or the position that the US holds when it comes to foreign telecoms, more specifically Chinese telecoms.
Mhm.
So today we're going to get into it, man. I got some questions for you. So this article comes from Aldon. Um, the US plans to bar Chinese telecoms over national security concerns. Now, the United States FCC is reportedly looking to bar Huawei, ZTE, and some other telecoms, possibly a national security threat, from approving wireless technologies in the US. The FCC will vote this month on a bipartisan proposal to guarantee that corporations raising security concerns do not influence test laboratories and telecom certifying bodies that certify wireless technology for the US market. Now, last week, the FCC said that it will not allow Huawei test labs to participate in equipment authorization program, and they rejected Huawei's request to extend its accreditation as the lab's accreditation was about to expire on Tuesday. And of course, Huawei had nothing to say. Um, so my question to you first is, are they picking on China? Are they threatened by China? Or is
I
this
don't
a
think
valid
so.
concern?
I don't think so. The US has been late on this for 4 years now. Like 4 years ago, the UK has banned Huawei telecoms. Same thing with Australia and same thing with New Zealand. I think a couple of countries in the world have already banned their network or their test labs for being even part of the conversation regarding carriers. Like this is the one point where the US I think is pretty late, which is
Yeah.
surprising to me because all we're hearing from the US since 2016 is China, China, China.
Hmm.
Even
Well,
before the pandemic.
yeah, I think Trump was, he had mentioned it a few years ago about not allowing Huawei to get the contract for 5G installation.
Yeah. And that was, I
Yeah,
think, the main contention for the UK one
yeah,
was the installation of 5G networks,
yeah. But
which
he
was
was
later picked up by Australia and New Zealand.
right. I think it stalled because I don't want to go down this.
This
I don't
was
want to go
even
down this.
before 5G was actually being told as the cause of COVID. So
Right. I mean, but I don't even want to go down this road again today. So I'll just say this really briefly. He tried to do it, but the opposition media smeared him as xenophobic, right? It's because they're Chinese. He doesn't like the Chinese. So it kind of stalled. But I think now, like, there's quite a few companies actually here that they're doing this to. If I can find, okay, so in 2022, banned approvals of new telecommunications equipment from Huawei and ZTE, as well as telecom and video surveillance equipment from Hytera Communications Corp, Hangzhou Hikvision Digital Technology, and Zhejiang Dahua Technology Company. They also added Russia's AO Kaspersky Lab, China Telecom Americas Corp., China Mobile International USA, Pacific Networks Corp., and China Unicom Americas to the covered list, which includes companies that pose threats to U.S. national security under a 2019 law aimed at protecting U.S. communications networks. So, I mean, do you think China just is this just an in? Like, is this how they surveil? It's like a new age, you know. Why you don't need to plant a bug when every American is carrying one in their pocket.
I think it's not necessarily about just China or Russia in general. Like, I think these countries actually recognize technology has been moving so fast with the
Mhm.
current growth, the progress of social media, information and how it's being received and how it's being utilized, as well as the surgence of AI. Same thing with cryptocurrencies. During the past couple of years, technology is moving too fast for
Mhm.
securities to actually catch up. So the best thing we could do for now, until we are actually will be able to put in safeguards for these, would just be to ban them,
Right.
because you need to first have the illness before you have the cure.
True. At least the symptoms, right? They have symptoms of
Yeah.
untrustworthiness.
Usually you think of a cold as a symptom, right? It's no longer a main disease.
Right,
Same
right.
with
Well,
the
I mean,
same
yeah,
problem that we have with some of the sickness.
right. Well, you know, the FCC chair, Jessica Rosenworcel, said in a statement that the agency must ensure that our equipment authorization program and those entrusted with administering it can rise to the challenge posed by persistent and ever-changing security and supply chain threats. So basically, they're saying, I mean, not basically outright, they're saying like, we don't trust y'all.
Yeah. I think every country doesn't trust any country outside of their own, in a sense. Like, it just so happens that China's been a part of some of the craziest things over the past couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Their humanitarian track record has not been that exemplary,
Yes. Very good point.
right? So it, it really takes a lot for them to actually take their credibility back. Even if these are legitimate businesses, like let's say Huawei, let's
Mhm.
say hypothetically is not part of anything that's sinister.
Right.
It's hard to actually not be suspicious of them just because of their association with a certain country that the whole world has been completely suspicious of.
Right. Right. Right.
Like even Sweden and guess France and Italy are actually banning Huawei. So these are countries that I believe doesn't have any tensions regarding China, but they still feel like they need to ban it.
Well, there's obviously something that's just off, right? Like this isn't unwarranted, right? There's
So I guess in
something
some
with
sense
with
these
these
are just
companies.
preventative, right?
That's what I was about to say. I don't know if it's preventative or if
There's a
there's
fine line
hard
between
evidence.
there's a fine line between this being preventative and being xenophobic, right? So
Well, it's like it's like yeah, I guess it's kind of like racism, right? I mean, are you being overtly racist or are you stating a stereotypical fact?
because
Right?
it
There's
does
there's a,
close
there's a
out,
thin line.
it does not only, although it safeguards the U.S. government regarding the China stuff regarding security, but it does close out opportunities for Chinese people when it comes to their life.
As how do you mean?
When it comes to the employments and advancements, like
Mm,
it also closes out employments there in the U.S. for possibilities. But then again, if security is their main concern, and I think every country right now, particularly this election, is going to be looking at securities from the outside interference. Like
right,
this is a logical step for them. Although I'm not 100% for it, there is still an argument to be made that this is something that needs to be done.
right. I agree. It's Yeah, well, I guess well, obviously it is preventative, right? Like all these things would be considered, preventative measures. But I don't think I don't really think it's a maybe situation. I think they have hard evidence that these companies are, I don't know if I would go as far as to say nefarious,
They might
but
have evidence regarding it, but still, phones are still being made in China. Particular technology used in the US are actually developed in China. Like,
right.
where do you draw the line when it comes
Yeah,
to security?
I mean that's where a lot of Apple products are made and nobody
Yeah,
seems to be
and
bitching.
everybody seems to be fine with it. Like,
Yeah.
where do we draw the line with these things?
I don't know. I mean, this could be because I know the US likes to paint or not Russia, but well, Russia too, but China kind of in a bad light. And again, I feel like we should reiterate that when we say China, we don't mean the people.
Should I just put a disclaimer every episode?
Yeah, it should be just yeah. It's like I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking about your government. I'm not even a big fan of my government. I'm definitely, I love Americans. The American government, not sure I'm on board 100% with it. So again, not the people, the ruling party or whatever the government. They, they do like to paint them in a bad light, but I personally think that the Chinese regime, the CCP or whatever it is, uh, they they don't want to be. They don't want to play second fiddle to the West. Right. They want to be a world power. They want to be the world power. They want to take over space. They want to I think I seen something where they're trying to like claim ownership of the moon or some shit. Like it's crazy. So, preventative or maybe maybe instead of calling it preventative, we could call it proactive versus like reactive, like do something now before something happens.
Like these things actually, when it comes to businesses, because at the end of the day, Huawei is still a business, right?
Right.
But right now we have a deal with Elon Musk and Tesla actually dealing with securing a deal with Baidu, which is
Hmm.
everyone knows is a search engine for the Chinese government. Like
Yeah.
for their what is it for the AI driven for their self-driving cars?
Yep. I do. Yeah.
So that technology sooner or later will be imported to the US. Do we suddenly stop that?
Right. Well, I mean, and is this? I don't know if it's necessarily like you can't do business here, but it's you're not going to be certifying any wireless tech.
Yeah,
Your labs aren't going to be accredited. So
yeah,
it's
because
maybe more of a black eye than it is anything else on these companies. Like, because I imagine if you are, I don't know, the CEO of one of these companies, like US accreditation is huge.
yeah, and how safe can you be sure with these type of bans? If you think about it, like
Right.
I know mobile phones are security is pretty intrusive.
Hmm.
But then again, if your car insurance hasn't been paid or you haven't made payments on your car, the company can actually stop your engine midway while you're running it on the
Right.
highway. So what's more intrusive? And that's coming from the US.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, it's kind of like, um, I mean, that's kind of the way it is with everything, right? Like it can be the middle of Christmas. If you don't pay your electric bill, they'll turn your electric off.
Yeah. And I guess this is more of being it's more being fearful for not being able to catch up with the current technology. That's why they're just gonna be stopping it for the meantime.
Mhm.
Like once they have all the securities in place, you probably invite in these outside factors in the country
That's
again.
that's a good point. Like not being, I guess I don't think getting on the list is, the death of a company, right? Like maybe next year or
In all
something.
fairness, it speaks more regarding the security system there in the US when it comes to their information.
Hmm.
Like the US is a superpower. Like they should be advanced in everything.
Right, that's a good point. Well, it says here one last thing before we wrap it up, and I want your opinion on this. In 2020, the FCC designated Huawei and ZTE as national security threats to communications networks, a declaration that barred U.S. companies from tapping an 8.3 billion with a B government fund to purchase equipment from these companies. So it's not just Chinese companies that this is, or foreign companies that this is affecting.
Yeah.
U.S. companies are missing out on funding,
Yep. So,
networking, all those things.
so I figured this isn't the permanent thing at the moment until the security system and the technology for the US can catch up or the rest of the world. But I think there's an open space for Huawei to actually re-enter this. Like if you're that competent, I don't think you would have to worry. Or if your technology is that reliable, you wouldn't have to be worried about these threats. I think this is more of posturing on the side of the US. And I hate reiterating this. The election is coming up. And you need to make people feel secure that their votes aren't going to be affected by any outside forces. Unlike the previous one, where it has been contested and a capital is going to be raided again. So,
That's true. That's a
so
very,
the
very good
timing
point.
of this is pretty prescient. The timing of TikTok, like Biden risking votes in the middle of an election year just to announce banning a platform where a majority of his user base is actually a customer
Yeah.
doesn't look good, right?
I mean, his first week in office, he had some TikTok bullshit at the White House, some
Yeah.
trans TikTok dance. I don't
But
know what it was. Christmas, they had some TikTokers at Christmas.
but those in power, I think, needs to assure people that whatever the results of the votes are accurate.
Yeah, I would have to completely agree with that. They have to put forth this image. One, that they care.
Yeah, if I was his campaign manager, I think this would be dumb when it comes to the timing. But it's needed, right? A bit of trust is needed to actually legitimize an election result. And
Yeah.
the
And
banning of outside forces that people used to try to utilize as a reason
mhm,
for illegitimizing an election is actually a good step.
right. Yeah, you're right. Election. I feel like we're going to see a lot more of this.
Yeah, we're
So
the
we'll,
next couple of months.
yeah, I mean, it's
Already
May,
May.
June, July, August, September, October. What is that? 6 months. Um, yeah, there's going to be a lot of, because I think this is one of the hottest topics right now. Is like, how is AI, foreign interference, social media, like all this, all the things that we've basically been talking about for the past few weeks, they all do kind of circle around the integrity of these platforms, right? Like manipulation or influence or outright uh, deceit, as far as like AI goes. And it's not going to level out. I feel like it's going to ramp up, especially as we get closer to November. And yeah, the politicians start saying, okay, we have to level the playing field.
And my final take on this is I wouldn't be surprised if during the next couple of months we receive a big news regarding a brand actually facing the same thing.
A US brand?
Yeah, or some outside brand that would actually be scrutinized for the same thing regarding election stability and election
Mm,
accuracy. Like, it wouldn't actually surprise me if we receive news regarding it
yeah, probably.
because
I will.
people need assurance that their vote would actually be counted and would actually the election would act. What happened during the previous elections, the issues regarding it wouldn't
Mhm.
happen again for this one, particularly when the entire world in the US is a bit more stable now compared what where we are 4 years ago.
Mm. Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. So I think, no, regardless of what happened 4 years ago, people are looking for some type of security or certainty that, to remove the question, right? That's what needs to happen. The question of, is this legit? Is this not? Is it influenced? Like that entire possibility for, I
Yeah.
think, a lot of people needs to be removed.
And I guess there needs to be an additional competition when it comes to telecoms company there in the
Mm,
US rather than just relying from outside the country. If they feel that there are outside threats, why not support startups that provide the
yeah,
same services, right?
right.
Like startup companies on the telecom side of things were never being talked about.
Very true. Very, very true. Well, let's see. Any wagers on what company it'll be? Like, maybe that's somewhere good to invest in, right? Like, oh, I seen T-Mobile and Mint, Ryan Reynolds Mint, they merged or
Mint
whatever.
Mobile
Yeah, Mint Mobile maybe
funding
the
Canadian terrorists.
yeah, yeah,
Where they blow
yeah,
up, they say sorry.
yeah. What's all the fuss about? Yeah. But all right, well, that wraps up today's edition of Tech Times Daily. And tune in again tomorrow, yeah, for more updates and you know our insight and a brief discussion about what's going on with technology. And until then, stay connected, stay curious. And for Christian Tejedis, I'm Chris Short. See you next time.